This conversation concerning parental responsibility and opting out has been very difficult for me to have. It has dragged up feelings that I thought I had long since dealt with, but apparently I was wrong. I don't have any kids, nor do I want any. But I have lived with more than one single mother in my day, and I have watched their lives and their children's lives from the outside looking in. And the themes of these lives is always the same. One mother's struggle to complete these pre-prescribed, exclusively socially acceptable sets that almost everyone in society has told them is the best thing for their children. And of course, who doesn't want what's best for their children? There was Margie, who had a son. He was 3 years old when I lived with them, and she was very, very lonely. And I watched her, one after the other, entertain various men, trying desperately to complete her set. Sometimes she would get so focused on the building of it that she would become annoyed with the distraction that her child presented. And because I live in a society of spankers, she would hit that 3-year-old with a belt. And I wanted to do something, but I was spanked too as a child as well. That was all I knew about disciplining children. And it felt wrong every time it happened, but she would tell me, "What do you know? You don't even have kids." I would like to believe that today I would do something differently. But when that child has no one else, and what we call the system is even harder on kids than the parents that the state takes them away from sometimes, it's impossible to really know. And then there was Beth. Beth's parents tried desperately to make their set work and failed. And Beth's father, who was an alcoholic, opted out of their little set and moved to Austin to drink and have fun. And her mother was left with an incomplete set to fix, so she remarried not long after that to a man who was not the best guy in the world. But at least he stuck around. And years later, when Beth told her that not only him, but his son from his first wife had both touched her inappropriately, she pretended that she didn't hear her. And Beth was abandoned in her own home, surrounded by people who were supposed to love and protect her. But then Beth grew up and was for many years my best friend. When we met, she had a son whose father was in prison and would be for 10 years. And she would tell me how proud she was that Joseph was planned and that she chose to have him because everyone in her life that she had ever loved had abandoned her, and she knew if she had a child, there would always be someone in this world that would love her unconditionally. So years passed, and she married a man who treated her like a princess until he won her hand in marriage. And then he treated her like a servant whose only purpose was to keep the house and care for his mother, who told her what a poor wife she was for her son every chance she got. And needless to say, that set didn't work. And by this time, Joseph's father was due to get out of prison, and they started writing each other. They made promises to each other. And when he got out, she introduced him to Joseph and told Joseph, "This is your father." He moved in with them, and they tried to make it work. That's what she would always say to me. You have to make it work. But Daddy, going from one cage of bars to another, felt too confined by this little set. So he opted out and chose instead to make it work with another woman and her incomplete set. And I lived with during this time, right after Joseph's father left. I moved in with her to help her take care of the bills, and I also needed an affordable living situation. And I helped her take care of her kids, or her son. At that time, she only had one. And I remember seeing the joy in his face when he would talk to his father on the phone and hear about all the things they would do together the next time they saw each other. And the first time he didn't show up, Joseph was crushed. I remember hearing him cry in his room, and I can only imagine the things that were going on in his head. Does he love his new baby better than me? Did I do something wrong? But he didn't do anything wrong. You know it, and I know it. But how do you tell a child that who is that wounded? So gradually over time, Joseph would become less and less hurt when Daddy wouldn't show up or make excuses postponing the date, even on his birthday. And that almost uncontrollable joy that boy felt when he knew his father intended to come and see him turned into this apathetic, the one you hear from a kid who knows he's being lied to. That one. I could go on and on, I could tell you about the next guy Beth tried to fit into her set that couldn't be bothered to take care of the 4 kids he had had with his previous girlfriend. And even though I would warn her, Beth, if you want to know what kind of father he will be if you let him get you pregnant by not using protection with him, just look at how he treats his other children. And she would get mad at me and make excuses for him and accuse me of being jealous of her set. So he got her pregnant. And he too opted out. She didn't press him for child support. All she wanted from him was to spend time with his son. Come to the birthday party that I helped her put together. Because after he left, I was still there, helping her raise her children. a more reliable parent figure than any man she had ever tried to bring into her set. But that wasn't good enough. Because as straight women, our relationship was platonic, and that kind of set isn't recognized as a legitimate family in our society. I remember watching the car pull up and seeing his girlfriend get out of the driver's seat with him in the passenger seat and walk the gift to the door. And Beth would greet her warmly. And when she was gone, she would tell me how highly she thought of her because she made him buy his son a gift. Just like Beth tried to make him do the right thing and just spend time with his other 4 children whose mother she tried desperately to get along with. Because it's all about the children first. So Beth is married again to a different man. As far as I know, they're still married. But he had to move out of state. And Joseph, her first son, couldn't go with them because he was a very troubled child. And I don't blame him. And he got into legal trouble and had to stay behind here in Texas. And now he's living with her mother and the man who molested her as a child. Do I blame the men in these stories for all of these things? No. I can see how all played a part in them. The mothers, the deadbeat dads they tried to make a life with, and the society we live in that only accepts certain sets as valid. You see, this conversation of parental responsibility and opting out is the exact same one mothers and fathers have been having in loud voices behind closed doors that are not nearly soundproof enough for many, many years. And there are many differences between a fetus and a child. But for the sake of this video, the most important difference you need to be aware of is this. The child can hear you.